Hello, everybody. Today we have an incredible privilege to welcome Carla Paszkowski, who is sitting there patiently with the city of Krakow in the background. Carla's actually at the Sunshine Coast, and she'll tell us all a little bit more about who she is and how come she's talking to us. But essentially, she contacted me about a week ago by Facebook to see if I wanted to share some of the photos that she's taken when she went back to Poland. And of course, I jumped at the opportunity. So welcome, Carla, and tell us a little bit more about where you are right now, vis-a-vis where your life has been in the last couple of years.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. So I'm Carla. I went through Polaron to get my Polish passport a couple of years ago. And as Eva said, I just thought I'd reach out because I've had such a good experience with them. And since getting my Polish passport, I've moved over to the UK, and being in such a great close proximity to Poland, I've jumped over there every opportunity I've gotten. I'm actually in Wrocław here. So I've got a
okay, that
background
tells you how much I know about Poland. Yes,
it's okay. It's similar. Yes. So I just wanted to talk about the experience that I've had, and share some travel stories if anyone's interested, because it's all been so good.
That's amazing. And we're going to ask Andrea shortly to show us some pictures that you've put together, and they just look really happy pictures. So what I wanted to touch on, Carla, if that's okay, is that journey. And because I guess, a lot of people that embark on it, they want European citizenship. Let's face it, They want to have the flexibility of being able to work and study and not have to worry about visas. But for most people, it becomes something completely different. It becomes such a identity, journey to your new identity. Has that been the case for you?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I only had one grandparent who was Polish, and I'd never been to Poland before.
So this is your grandpa, yeah? Your grandfather was Polish? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So my grandfather came over to Australia after World War II and immigrated here, married an Australian woman, and then raised my father and his brothers in Australia. And so we didn't really have a lot of that connection to Poland. We still had a little bit of contact with some of the relatives there, but as I'm sure you can imagine, after World War II, there was the Soviet Union. And so my grandfather never really wanted to, I suppose, get in any trouble. So he didn't really go back there a lot, but he was still in contact with his family and helping support them a little bit. So in getting my Polish passport, in the whole process of it, I've gotten in communication a lot more with my Polish family. And then since I've traveled over there, I've gone over there and actually met them, because I never met them before. And I was able to meet new Polish family members I never even knew I had. So it's been absolutely amazing experience for me.
So you're not just Polish on paper, I guess. That there's that really deep connection that you've been able to discover. And I guess,
Exactly.
For many people whose families left in really traumatic circumstances, you've met your grandfather, right? You knew him?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I did.
So
yeah.
I don't know what sort of a man he was, but a lot of men in particular are pretty guarded about information and about what they've gone through. They're kind of pragmatic, and they'd be like, oh, don't worry about it. Let's move on. So was that the case for you as well?
Yes, he would talk a little bit about it in his older age if you would ask about it. But, my father always said growing up, he really didn't talk about his experiences very much. And it's also mirrored in the fact that my father didn't get taught any Polish, and it was just sort of a bit of a closed book there. So, you can't even imagine what he went through. We've learned since the research about all this great stuff that he did. Like, he was a member of the Polish Underground Army and fought in the Warsaw Uprising, which is that's amazing. Like, I didn't even really, I kind of knew a little bit. He had a little bit of artwork in his home, which had the Polish anchor on it, which was a symbol of the Polish Underground Army. But we've been able to learn so much through this process. Plus, when I was applying, even though in his older age, he became a little bit more open and talked about his experiences in the war and during his childhood, I still wasn't able to get a lot of information because he did unfortunately suffer from dementia in his last couple of years. So, this whole process with Polaron has been like, it's just been amazing being able to find all this information, because I didn't actually realize when I applied for my citizenship through you guys that there would be quite so much research done. I don't know if it's the same for everyone, but for me, because they had to determine whether my grandfather was a citizen and then never lost his citizenship, they were able to uncover information about where he went, where he grew up, and what he did during the war. And so, yeah, it was incredible just learning all these facts. I really didn't expect it. I thought it would just be a application, you get your Polish passport, and, you know, it's all sort of very official. But it was kind of an emotional journey at the same time.
Right, and that's so interesting that you said that, because people don't necessarily understand that that's what's going to happen. I mean, Poland's gone through really traumatic times as far as, you know, changes of borders, and of course people were displaced, and you know, when they came to Australia, mostly via Germany, they were supposed to somehow get on with life. There were no support services as I guess we have today. And they did go a lot of trauma. And I think when you mentioned your grandfather's dementia, often that comes out at that time, where they become more open, but also they relieve what happened to them, because they've never dealt with it properly. You know, like we do today, we have counseling services, we can go and seek out that help in terms of mental health support. But in those days, you were just meant to get on with your life. And I think, you know, men in particular were supposed to be stoic and kind of stony face and just get on with it. Yeah.
Just sweep it under the rug. Yes, absolutely. And yeah, so I didn't really grow up with a lot of knowledge about what went on, but I've been able to discover that through other family members who were able to talk to him about it, but also through this process of uncovering and talking to family in Poland, because a lot of they were a lot more open and yeah, able to relay some stories of my grandpa and his impact on them when they were growing up. So yeah, it's really nice.
And what's the most, I guess, surprising thing about Polish people that you found, when you know, about your family, I guess?
I've been blown away by Poles. They're absolutely lovely, lovely people. And they've got this culture of generosity and hospitality, and they've got such open hearts. So in meeting my Polish family, I was really taken aback at how it's just assumed that I have a place to stay with them. You know, it's like, if you're visiting, you will stay with us. And they've got a 3-bedroom home, but they will bundle all 4 of them into one room so that mum and I can each have our own room, which we were just so surprised about. And, you know, they will save all their food. My dad went to visit back in the 80s when they were very, very poor and they were living in the Soviet times. And he said they would save up all their food just so he could have a really big feast when he came. They've also got this amazing culture of not wasting anything. You know, everything gets put to good use. And even Polish people that I've met in London since living there have that same attitude, which is really nice. They've got a very sustainable attitude. Sustainable before it was trendy, I suppose.
Right. Before it was cool. Yeah. And what sort of elements are you finding in yourself about being Polish? What kind of things have you discovered about yourself, if any?
I've been told that I look very Polish, and I didn't really appreciate that growing up, but going to Poland, I suppose I can see that. I suppose I feel a connection to the place that I didn't expect as well. I don't know whether that's just because it also happens to be an incredible place to travel to. But I feel also a little bit, I mean, just little things. Like, I love the food, even though I didn't grow up there. And there's a lot of food that I love in Europe, but when I get there, I'm just like, oh, it's so great. I mean, my grandfather did cook a lot of like bigos and that sort of thing when we were growing up. So maybe there's a little bit of a tie there, but it's weird that I didn't expect it to feel a little bit like home. But it does a little bit. So that's really nice.
And how are you finding the language? Because I think for a lot of English speakers, Polish is a massive challenge as far as pronunciation and grammar. Have you picked up any Polish at all?
I've been trying a little bit, but it's very difficult. I just find that it's so different to English. I mean, I have no excuse though. I should be doing better and learning, but Oh, it would have been so good to have learned as a child. Yeah, it's a hard language to understand, and probably an even harder language to get your mouth around. My Polish cousins, bless, they have this little 10-year-old daughter, and she will try and tell me, she sits there and she tries to teach me words, and she just laughs at me because I just can't pronounce anything properly. And so yeah, if anything, that's quite nice. It's nice to have that little bonding experience with her.
Yeah, that's very cute, and it's I think it's fair to say that in a city like Wrocław that we're seeing behind you, not Krakow people, Wrocław, there are a lot of English speakers nowadays, because I think you know, the times that you were talking when your father went to visit in 1980s, there was no way of traveling, but you know, particularly since Poland has become a part of EU, things have changed really rapidly,
Yes.
and you can you know, speak English if you need to. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's quite incredible how much, you know, I had this image in my head of Poland from what my father told me from his visits. And he said, you know, it was just grey and it was poor and it had a very stony feel to it. He probably went in winter as well, which didn't help. And he went with me the first time I've been, which was a trip we did to Krakow and Gdansk. And he was saying it's unrecognizable. The English is incredible. The visit, like actually how visitor friendly everything is really good, but without being touristy. And it's modernized, you know, it's just part of the EU. It feels like they've this, I suppose, financial injection they might have had from the EU went so far with them, because they were always hardworking. And you know, you go to other countries where they've always they haven't had the hardship that Poland had, but they haven't really done as much with the EU money that Poland has, because they always had the hardworking attitude and the great structure to their society. But now they can actually make good of that. And so the streets are clean, the place is safe. Everything, you know, there's even better Wi-Fi everywhere in Poland that I found in Australia. It's incredible. I suppose ashamedly I was expecting it to not be so first world, but it really is.
But I think Carla, you're such a great ambassador for a global citizen, I guess, or the concept of global citizenship, because I guess, you know, once the borders opened up for Polish people, they too traveled and they too were able to experience the world that we weren't able to. You know, I was also born there and I grew up there. And I think it's really interesting in some of the concepts you talked about, you know, about frugality and, you know, recycling things and not throwing things out and using them to the last drop, which is, you know, without sounding too stereotypical, of course, but it is a Polish quality, because we had nothing and you had to make things go a long way. And I think that's a nice thing that you've been able to connect with, because in the meantime, that's become trendy in the West, whereas we've always been cool.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's incredible like that. Yeah, something else I noticed was that the charitability of everyone is so palpable. I went back at Christmas and, you know, in the month leading up to Christmas, and everything was about giving to the poor. We don't quite have that as much. I find, like, you know, I went to visit my Polish family, and the kids on their weekends were volunteering at a supermarket, giving out little tokens, and then people would go to the store and buy whatever that token said, so a can of beans or something, and donate it. And I'd never really seen that before, and they're like, yeah, it's Christmas, all the kids do that here. They go and donate their time, and then they have a big charity day, big fair, just to raise money for the poorest children in their area, even some of the kids at school, and it's just part of their December. It's just like, well, yeah, you know, we all do what we can to take care of each other. And yeah, I found that really incredible.
And would you say that you could feel the sense of community? And you know, you've mentioned that people are very hospitable, and I'm sure that whenever they grab you, they feed you, because you've got to eat and you've got to eat and you've got to eat, right? But did you see that you know, I guess, sense of community and togetherness? Is that something that came across? Yeah.
Absolutely. Even as that encompasses the ancestors. So I was a little bit taken aback by how much they knew about their family tree, and their distant relatives. They, again, yeah, that sense of community sort of extends to that family. And I went back to Poland for All Saints Day, which is
Oh,
the 1st of
yes.
November. And I'd never even really heard of this tradition, but it was
Mm.
so nice that every year. So for people who don't know, that's where it involves, it's a, I assume, a religious day where they go to the graves of their ancestors and put candles, or, you know, departed loved ones. And so, you know, that I ashamedly, I've got grandparents' graves here who I almost have never visited. And over there, they make it a yearly tradition,
Mm.
and they put glittering candles all over the cemetery. And it really, it even, to me, it felt like it involved their past family members and their past loved ones in their lives. And yeah, it was beautiful to see. So that sense of community doesn't even finish when you pass away.
Mm.
You're still, you know, your spirit is still included in festivities, and the children, you know, they know all their, where their grandparents' graves were. They were, these 10-year-old girl and a 13-year-old boy were showing me around, like, oh yeah, this is Janina Paszkowska, and she is grandpa's grandmother, and then this is my uncle, and, like, you know, they just knew where all the graves were. It was really nice.
It's really meaningful, isn't it? And I think some of
Yeah.
these traditions are, well, of course they're Christian, but they do date back to pagan times, where you know, people would, on trees they would hang ornaments, and, you know, provide foods for the dead. So it's really ingrained into the society, and
Yeah.
how Polish people think of themselves, and the extended family, and the hospitality, and all of that.
Yes.
I think you can see it firsthand when you go. I'm very keen
Absolutely.
to for Andrea to show us some photos, if I may, because they are just incredible. So maybe you could take us through what
Yeah,
they are, and where
absolutely.
you've been, and what you've done, and we do have
Yeah.
a few minutes for questions after that.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I sent through some photos for everyone who's watching, because I just wanted to say how much of a great time I've had since getting my Polish passport. This one was from my trip to Krakow and Warsaw. This was the first time I went to Poland. Um, I was with my family, and then I did some solo travel by myself. Um, so yeah, I went to Warsaw and Krakow, and something that was really cool about this trip was that it was my first time solo traveling through Poland. So after my family left, I did a little bit of solo travel. By the way, any females who are thinking of solo traveling in Poland, it's incredibly safe and
Oh,
very,
wow.
very visitor friendly. So I never felt in danger. I stayed in a hostel right on the main street in Warsaw, there near the museums, and felt totally safe and had a great time.
Amazing.
This is just a little
Wow.
bit of a some shots of my favorite food. The one on the right of me holding the pickles is the first time I experienced a pickle vendor. So they have, you know, in markets you'll get these women selling these pickles, men and women, I suppose, and they have these giant buckets. I just love pickles. Anything pickled is great. And then on the left, I've got bigosh
Ah,
from
yes.
Christmas markets. It looks terrible, and it's in a styrofoam cup, which looks horrible, but it was, I can
It
assure you,
looks
this is one of my
delicious.
favorite meals that I had. I just got to the Christmas markets in Wrocław, sat down with some
Wow.
bigosh, and I was like, this is the life. It's like freezing cold and a steaming hot bowl of bigosh. So comforting, the
Oh,
ultimate
looks
comfort
looks
food.
amazing. Looks
And then
amazing.
the one on the bottom was pierogi in a vegan restaurant. So I actually went to, yeah, Wrocław, which is where my virtual background is definitely my favorite city in Poland. It absolutely blew me away. It's this perfect mix of that old culture and the beautiful architecture and the absolute height of European charm. But then it's also a university town. So with that often comes the cool sort of trendy vibe. And so they've got
Mm.
a lot of vegan restaurants, a lot of hipster cafes. And so here I am enjoying this vegan pierogi with tomato soup.
That's
But
so
yeah,
interesting that
Polish
you
food.
mentioned that, because people don't know that. They kind of, you know, the image that you kind of talked about initially when we started the live session of Poland being sort of grey, black and white, and, you know, meat and three veg or whatever it is,
Yeah.
that's no longer there. There's quite a large movement of veganism and vegetarianism, and people are very interested in health and fitness and what they eat, and a lot of the food is organic and it tastes delicious, as you said. And here you are, this is the 1st of November, is that right?
That's right. So this absolutely blew me away. This day was, as I said before, it's to, I suppose, remember loved ones who have departed. So that's me putting a candle on the grave of my great-grandmother, Janina Paszkowska. Yes, exactly. And I've just got a couple of shots either side of the candles. So that was during the day. We went and placed the candles, and then at night we went back and you light the candles, and it was absolutely beautiful. The photos don't even do it justice. It was just this really, it was like a fairyland. It was one of the most moving experiences I've ever had. I highly recommend anyone who's got Polish ancestors to try and make it back for the 1st of November, because it's just so moving.
Yeah, you can see that on your face. So this is your grandfather's mother, is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
So she stayed in Poland, and that's where she died, essentially. Now she's 70 years from here.
Exactly. So my grandfather he fought in the Warsaw Uprising, got taken to Germany, and she was in Warsaw with his little brother, where she stayed in for the rest of her life. I believe they moved north to Gdansk and Sopot after the war, but yeah.
Okay.
So here she is buried in Sopot. That was the cemetery.
Cakes, Carla, cakes. Is that
yeah.
Was that your birthday, was it?
That was. So this is a few shots of my family that I've actually been able to meet since getting my Polish passport and going over there. So the middle one is my grandfather's brother, so my great uncle and his wife. And then I was absolutely moved. I had to put this cake photo in because this was the first time I met them. I think it was even maybe the second day that I met these members of my family. Of course, we knew about each other, but it happened to be that week, my birthday and Tomek, my uncle's birthday as well. And so they had already planned this party. And because I was there, they decided to make it about my birthday as well. And they put my name on the cake, and it was just so amazing to be welcomed with open arms like that. So yeah, that's the family on the bottom left as well. They've got we went for a walk in the mountains there, and yeah, it was amazing.
But look at the table. Like, did they make you sit there and eat it all until you can't move?
Oh yeah, and they even do this, respectful thing where we were the guests, so they waited for us to serve ourselves, and we didn't even know what was happening. They were like all just sitting there, and we're like,
what's going on?
Eating, and they're like, eat, and we're like, well, yeah, but you too. They were like, no, you eat first. Okay, so this one was from Poznan.
Oh yeah.
So I went to Poznan on a Christmas market crawl that I did. I'll talk about that in a sec. And then this was it's called the St. Martin's croissant, and it's what Poznan is famous for in terms of food. And it was just a bit of fun. I literally walked into the museum and they were like, oh, we're doing the make your own St. Martin's croissant sort of thing. So that was really cool, just being able to sit there and watch this demonstration. It was very, very nice.
And you got a certificate as well.
Yeah, it was so sweet. Yeah. So
such good memories.
Yeah, and especially for an after lunch activity, I was literally just like, should I sit in the cafe and work on my laptop, or should I go into the museum? And then I was like, oh, now I know I've done a class in how to make a croissant. So that was really fun.
And there's so much to do. Yeah, and what's this? Where is this?
Okay, so I run. I love to run, and I've made sure I've done a really nice sort of run the first day every time I go to a new city, so I can really orientate myself, of course, unless the weather's bad. So the one on the very right is Poznan. You can see how it was really, really cold because it was December, and I actually did a running tour with like a local guide. So it's like a walking tour, but it's a lot more efficient because you get to go to a lot more places. And so that was just throughout the parks. The ones on the left, you can tell they're in summer. So that was in Warsaw. I went, and then the one in the middle, I had to put this in. So one of the first times I went to Sopot was in spring, which is like around apple season. And I was literally just running by the sea. And then I had my earphones in and I was just listening to my music, enjoying the scenery. And I literally kind of just looked around me and I was suddenly like Snow White, surrounded by this field of apples. It was almost like I could barely walk without stepping on apples. And coming from Australia, where we don't have a lot of fruit that can grow here, at least from the beach where I am, a lot of stuff doesn't really grow here. I was just in awe. I was like, have I just wandered into this fruitful wonderland? But it's just something, again, I didn't expect about Poland. It's so fruitful. Everywhere you go, at any time of year almost, there's something growing, whether it's apples or mushrooms or berries. It's such a beautiful thing. So I literally filled up my jacket pockets with apples and ran home. I was like, yes, got my fruit sorted for the week now.
And it tastes good, doesn't it? Like the food tends to taste like proper food. I don't know whether you found that, but yeah, there's that organic.
Can't get more organic than just wild trees by the sea. Like, it was amazing. Okay, cool. So this is the Christmas market tour that I did. Coming from Australia, again, we don't have Christmas markets here, and so it's a huge novelty. So the first year I lived in London, didn't get to any Christmas markets apart from one in London. So I made sure the second year I lived overseas, I was going to get to as many as I could. So I literally made like a pub crawl. I made myself a Christmas market crawl, and I mapped out a little route throughout France, Germany, and Poland for all the best Christmas markets. I did it all by train as well, because I know plane travel is not the most environmentally friendly way to do it. And I wanted to just try doing all of this by train. So it was such a great experience. And this is just a few photos. Like, I could have sent you a million photos of this.
It looks fantastic. Yeah. It looks really great. And the train systems and public transport, generally speaking, is just really amazing and very inexpensive in Poland. Everything's very clean and efficient, and they run on time. And I think it's a great way to travel, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, what's really this? Vegetables.
So this was the farm that my grandfather grew up on. So you guys managed to find the farm, for me. I didn't even know it was still a functioning farm. I had Nadia from the research team send me an email saying, hey, I found the farm that your grandfather grew up on and your great-grandparents met on. So my great-grandfather worked as the manager of this farm, and miraculously it's still a functioning farm and has its own shop. So I went and visited when I was in Warsaw. I caught an Uber all the way out there. It was about a 20 minutes out of Warsaw, and went into the shop which sells organic produce from the farm, met the owner, and he invited me in for tea and was like, oh my gosh, we have records of our grandma's memoirs. And he was like looking through it, and he found mention of my great grandma, and we just had this amazing afternoon catching up. And he was like, oh, we've got your grandma mentioned in these memoirs. So that was an incredible experience.
Yeah.
I had to put that in because I would not have known about this if it wasn't for Polaron.
So special.
And the research he did.
Wow. So these are, what are they? Are they tomatoes? No, they plums or something. Cherries.
I think they're cherries, yes. Yeah. So I was just like, that's sort of the only photos I got, unfortunately, because I was just so overwhelmed with meeting these people. But yeah, it was.
They look amazing, truly.
Now, this was from a trip I did to Warsaw by myself, also the same trip I found the farm. It was an unexpected sort of event. I didn't realize, but the Warsaw Uprising Day coincided with my trip. So I actually stayed a couple of extra days to do this. And for those of you who don't know, Warsaw Uprising Day is it's the anniversary of the first day of the Warsaw Uprising. And they celebrate it big time in Warsaw. And so I made sure to go to all the festivities. They have ceremonies. So I went to a ceremony where they did like a memorial service. And then at night they have like live music. You can see this big stage behind me in that photo. Everyone's wearing the flags with the Polish anchor on it, which was the symbol of the Warsaw Uprising. And that was an incredibly moving experience. But also it was amazing that it was just an accident. I didn't even know that this was happening. And it was also the 75th anniversary last year when I was there. So it was a huge, it was music in the street. Something else, if you are interested in this tradition, there's this incredibly moving moment at 5 p.m. on the 1st of August every year where they all have a minute of silence, but they blast sirens throughout the city. And just being in the town square and everyone's just still, and you hear these big sirens encompassing the city, it's actually almost scary, but you just get goosebumps. And it was an amazing experience. So had to put that one in too.
It does look great. And I think and here we go with your Polish passport. Where was this taken?
Oh, this was the day that I got my Polish passport. It was so amazing. So I'd already moved to London, and you guys helped me a lot actually with that, because I had to apply from the London embassy. So that's another easy thing, is if anyone's wondering, if they're going to be moving overseas, you can still use Polaron. And then once you've got your citizenship, you can apply from any Polish embassy. So this was in London, the day that I got my Polish passport. A very, very happy day.
I'm sure you can see it through every pore of your face how happy you were. Carla, guess what? We've run out of time, but from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for firstly sharing all this, because I think hopefully it inspires people to embark on a journey of their own. But I think the way that you've shared and you've talked about the meaning of it all, because yes, at the end of it, you got a passport, you can stay in Europe for as long as you want. Yeah. But I think the way you've explained it to us is that there's so much meaning and so much, I guess, substance behind it all. And you've been able to connect not only through your ancestors, but through real people and through traditions. And, hopefully that's helping you shape yourself as a person, as to help your identity. So I am incredibly grateful that you found some time to share this with us. And I wanted to thank you on behalf of everybody that's worked on your passport. Some of these people have moved on, some are still with us. I'm still here. I'm going to be 97 and working, that's for sure. But I really enjoyed this journey with you right now, because in the last 30 minutes we've been able to see not only how you've managed to reconnect with your roots, but what it actually means to you. So thank you so very much. And
it's been a pleasure.
We let you get on with your day.
Yeah, no worries. And if anyone's thinking of doing it, definitely do it. It's a really, really awesome experience. And these guys I literally couldn't have done it without them. So
amazing.
Yay.
Amazing. Thank you so very much. Have a great day, Carla. Thank you.
You too. Thanks, Eva.
Bye.
Bye-bye.